Welcome to this video, which is part of a series of trainings offered by the Midwest Center for School Mental Health. Our series offers guidance on developing and implementing effective school-based mental health systems. My name is Dr. Mark Sander, and I serve as co-director for the Midwest Center. In this training, I will share some of the best practices in building and maintaining effective district and school mental health teams. But before we start talking about mental health teams, it is important to talk about the overarching vision of safe and supportive schools, which includes three critical frameworks. First, comprehensive school mental health systems framework. Second, culturally responsive, anti-racist, and equity framework, or CARE. And third, trauma-informed, healing-centered framework. These frameworks are important because they set the context for the climate and culture in our schools. So what is the Comprehensive School Mental Health Systems Framework? It is a framework that was developed by the National Center for School Mental Health and the Mental Health Technology Transfer Center. It consists of 8 best practice modules, and teaming, which we're going to review today, is one of those best practice modules. The goal of the Comprehensive School Mental Health Systems Framework is to give districts and schools concrete information and tools so that they can implement the best practices and build effective systems to support all students and families' mental well-being. The CARE model is a mindset and a set of values that need to be a part of all that we do in schools. The C stands for cultural responsiveness, meaning that students, families, and educators' cultural references, identity, beliefs, and rituals are included in all aspects of the school environment and the educational approaches we use, including the supports and services that promote well-being and mental health. The AR is for anti-racist. Schools that are implementing the CARE model actively and intentionally promote school policies and practices that center equity and oppose racism and other forms of oppression. Lastly is E for equity, which is ensuring that every student has what they need to achieve academically and experience positive mental health and well-being. I'm sure you've heard of trauma-informed and healing-centered approaches. It is important that the members of your district or school mental health team understand and incorporate these values into the approaches that they promote. There are 5 critical values. They are 1, understanding the impact of adversity and trauma on students and families and staff, which can lead us to understanding individuals' behavior through a different lens. 2, believing in the power of safe, authentic, and positive relationships to create healing. 3, committing to creating emotional and physical safety for all. 4, making sure that when we think about students, we are thinking about them holistically. And 5, recognizing the importance of creating opportunities for choice, control, and empowerment for students, staff, and families. Now that we've set the context for the environment and values that we hope your district and school teams will be working within, let's talk about what is a mental health team at either the district or the school level. It is a group of school and community stakeholders that meet regularly, use data-based decision-making, and rely on action planning to support students' mental health. I want to emphasize those 3 critical characteristics again. They meet regularly, they use data-based decision-making, and they rely on action planning to make sure that interventions are designed, implemented, and then followed up and monitored to make sure that students are making progress, and if not, then we're going to try and do something different. Too often, we have districts and school mental health teams that meet infrequently, or they don't use data, or they don't use action planning or mechanisms to follow up to make sure that interventions and supports that were developed are actually working for the student. Please take a moment right now and think about what mental health teams do you have in your school. We oftentimes see that schools or districts may have many different types of mental health teams, such as school climate teams, student support teams, district mental health teams, and many others that are listed on this slide. I'm sure you can think of many more that you might have at your district or school. During the rest of this presentation, we're going to talk about the value of teams, the function, and the recommended stakeholders to have on those teams. Mental health teams at either the district or the school level provide value because they create opportunities for authentic and concrete communication between members regarding students, about the school culture and climate, and create a space for staff to share what is working well and what are the challenges that need to be addressed. Mental health teams also promote collaboration between school staff and other stakeholders and provide opportunities for mutual support. When mental health teams are working well, they have created a common vision and are mutually setting priorities pertaining to the needs and resources, which will allow for the most resources to reach the most students and families in your school. Let's talk about district mental health teams. District mental health teams have several important functions. Oftentimes, they are in charge of shaping the district guidelines and standards for school mental health policy and practice that will be implemented in your schools. Members of the district mental health team oftentimes train, coach, and support school teams in implementing those policies and practices. They also have the role of serving as liaison between state agencies, the school district, and schools to make sure that opportunities related to resources are aligned with your district. The district mental health team often plays a role of creating partnerships and maintaining those partnerships between community leaders, family members, students, and schools. They also have the important role of working with schools to embed equitable practices in their buildings and in the services they deliver, as well as the services that are delivered by community partners in their buildings. Let's talk about the mental health teams in schools. The focus of the mental health team in a school is on their building and aligning resources from the district, the community, and within their own school to meet the needs of students, families, and staff. This team oftentimes is the team that helps schools implement the district mental health policies and practices. And this team often participates in the training and technical assistance from the district and other sources to gain more knowledge and expertise to implement those practices. They also work to use data-driven processes to assess student need and progress after supports or interventions have been put into place. So one tool in learning about these best practice indicators is called the School Health Assessment and Performance Evaluation System, or the SHAPE system. It is a tool that was developed by the National Center for School Mental Health, which helps school districts and schools do a self-assessment on the 8 domains of the Comprehensive School Mental Health System framework. As mentioned earlier, teaming is one of those domains, and on this slide is listed the 10 quality indicators for teaming. Over the next several slides, We'll walk through some of these quality indicators. Having multidisciplinary teams at both district and school levels is critical to ensuring that diversity and inclusivity is in the discussions and decisions made by the team. Therefore, it is important that members of the team represent and reflect the diversity of students and families and staff in the school and the district. But it's not enough that they are members of the team. They need to be supported to attend regularly and have an active voice in these meetings. A list of some of the groups that should be included is provided on this slide. Again, it's not enough just to have a multidisciplinary and diverse team, but each member of that team should develop knowledge and awareness about their own cultural identities, their own biases and assumptions, understand how culture and language can influence how we see behavior, the cultural factors that influence the expression of mental health, and the social determinants that influence the communities that we are working in. This will be an ongoing process that will require continual and intentional learning, which may involve members of the team doing their own self-assessment and their own work on this outside of the team meetings. Another way that teams can ensure that cultural beliefs, language, and rituals are well represented in the discussions and decision-making is to involve representatives from diverse communities who could serve as cultural brokers on your teams. These cultural brokers do not need to have a mental health background, but rather they may be caregivers or family members with lived experience navigating school or community mental health systems who can serve as a liaison between the school and the community. There are many different ways to identify individuals who may be good cultural brokers, such as contacting local parent advisory groups, talking with community mental health providers, or working with local public health, or reaching out to school or district staff who might know individuals who would be good cultural brokers. Another best practice is involving students and families in your district and school mental health teams. When teams do this well, they recognize students and families as experts in their lived experience. They proactively prepare students and families for what to expect in these meetings. They actively provide opportunities for students and parents to ask questions about the meetings, about the content of the meetings, and they make sure that they are an active part of decision-making and discussions. They ensure that individuals who lead and develop interviews and focus groups represent the diversity of students and families in the school and district. When doing this well, teams will make sure that written materials are clear and in plain language and are free of professional jargon, and that these materials are in the first language of students and families. When your team is utilizing their care mindset, they are mindful of students and families from groups who have been historically marginalized, and they amplify and prioritize their voices in discussions. In addition to these key practices, it is important to make sure that students and families have transportation support and that meetings are scheduled at times when they are able to attend, which may mean scheduling meetings in the afternoon or evening. Earlier in this video, we talked about the care model, and now I want to share with you some team reflection questions that can help your team implement some of the care values. Some team reflection questions are, what are the strengths and needs of our community? Another question is, who is our system serving? In what ways are we causing unintended harm? Another question is, how does oppression show up in our work? These reflection questions can push team members to reflect on their understanding of these topics, and hopefully encourage them to continuously seek out professional development to fill in any gaps in understanding and to keep up to date on new perspective and research about these questions and about the cultural communities and your local context. Now we're going to move on into the section that's focusing on the best practices to maintain and build effective school community partnerships. The best practices you see on the slide come from the SHAPE system, which we talked about earlier, which is that online self-assessment tool that districts and schools can use to measure how they're doing related to the 8 best practices, including teaming. I want to highlight the last bullet, which is critical. Districts and schools should engage community partners that represent and are trusted in the community and who value the care mindset and our trauma-informed, healing-centered approaches. Our next several slides, we will walk through the best practices and some of the tools that districts and schools can use. A school or district should create a wish list of what they would like to get from a community mental health partner. You might not get everything on your wish list, but it is important to make one so that you are intentional about what things you're willing to give up and what things you're not willing to give up. On the slide, the National Center for School Mental Health provides a sample of wish list items. I would highly recommend everything on this wish list. There is one item that might be difficult to find from some of the community partner agencies, which is bullet 2, which is looking for an agency that can provide supports at Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. This might be difficult for some of your community agencies unless your school has funding to support them doing interventions at Tier 1 and Tier 2. Oftentimes we see school districts or schools providing that Tier 1 and Tier 2 support and bringing in community agencies at Tier 2.5 or Tier 3. Another way that districts and schools can build strong partnerships with community agencies is to co-create guidance and protocols with that mental health agency. These protocols would outline how the mental health supports are going to work in the building and what supports and responsibilities are expected of the school. On this slide, you can see a one-page document that outlines expectations around how the partnership would work, as well as outlining specific types of meetings that should occur over the course of a school year. This tool is meant to help create mutual understanding and agreement between the school and the community provider on what each partner can expect from the other. Another tool in creating clarity between the school district or the school and the community mental health agency is developing a memorandum of understanding or a contract. Some of the essential components are the purpose of the agreement, the roles and responsibilities of each partner, outlining if there's any fiscal or resource agreements that need to be in place, making sure that there's a liability release for the district or the school, and that there is language in the contract or MOU regarding insurance and indemnification. In the SHAPE system, there are examples of MOUs and contracts that you can take a look at. The next quality indicator relates to how your team is working to avoid duplication and promote efficiency. It's critical to have a system to evaluate your existing team structures, and we will show you a tool for that on the next slide. At the district or school level, it's important to establish unique goals for each of the teams. And if you have multiple teams, it is important to have a process for frequent and consistent communication between the teams and address any barriers for information sharing. Here's a resource that was developed called the School Mental Health Team Alignment Tool. It helps a district or school examine the overlap in team membership, purpose of the team, the responsibilities of members, and the goals of each team. It helps identify teams that could be integrated because they have a shared purpose. And they could also help identify individuals who could be liaisons across teams because of their membership in multiple teams. Now that we have figured out what teams we have and have discussed their purpose and goals, we need to talk about what happens in the meeting. So first of all, I want to talk about what are some of the best practices for holding effective meetings. This is a critical and oftentimes overlooked component of building effective teams. Whenever possible, your team should have a regular meeting schedule, and you should track attendance and troubleshoot if it becomes apparent that the scheduled time is not working for all members. It is critical to create and use an agenda and send that agenda out ahead of time so people can prepare for the meeting. The meeting should be focused on making actionable decisions and also have a clear protocol to follow up on the status of action items at future meetings. Meetings should accommodate differences in family and community partner schedules. They should be mindful of any language needs and any physical limitations that team members might have. There should be clear guidance regarding the purpose of the meeting and the role of the team members, and a focus on using meeting practices that promote inclusion. It is important that we make sure that the meetings we hold are equitable. Some of the best practices around this are emphasizing purpose and identity. Participants should be clear about the purpose of their time and work together. Participants should feel the purpose of the meeting holds value for them and that they understand the role they have in working towards achieving the goal and purpose of the meeting. Teams need to encourage meaningful collaboration. This means that there are providing ample opportunities for participants to share knowledge, engage in dialogue, provide constructive feedback. We need to be mindful of potential power dynamics and shift them when they occur by paying attention to the dynamics with the awareness of historical patterns of power and participation based on race, gender, class, age, and role. Again, this is a piece of creating that equity in your team to make sure that everyone feels their voice is valued and heard. And again, this will be something that will be an ongoing process for your team. The next quality indicator we want to discuss is how to delineate staff roles and responsibilities. One question for you to think about as we move through this section: what do you think would help your school or district better delineate roles and responsibilities related to school mental health teams? So just think about that for a second. What do you think would help your school or district better delineate the roles and responsibilities related to your school mental health teams? On school mental health teams, team members often take on responsibilities that may be outside their role because of staffing shortages or necessity or other factors. Having a process that your mental health team can use to collaboratively delineate roles and responsibilities is important to promote efficiency throughout your system and to build trust and confidence among team members. And again, this might be something that you need to come back to over time as team members, like we said earlier, might get pulled into doing responsibilities outside of their role. If that consistently happens, you should re-examine those roles and responsibilities and make adjustments. It's important to make sure that this is a collaborative process with all team members' input encouraged and valued. Some of the best practices to keep in mind during your discussions are: make sure you clarify roles and responsibilities for both school employed and community employed school mental health staff. 2, ensure roles and responsibilities reflect the skills, training, and knowledge and areas of expertise for each type of staff member. 3, when there are multiple individuals with responsibilities for a given role, make sure you have a clear plan for who will address the issue first and how the responsibilities will be assigned afterwards. Once your team has come to a consensus around the roles and responsibilities of members of the team, it is important to document this and then share this information throughout your school through multiple ways, such as written communication, reviewing it at staff meetings, and also one-on-one conversations with school staff. Now that we've clarified the roles and responsibilities of your mental health team, let's move into reflecting on when a mental health referral to your school mental health team might be warranted for students. A mental health referral is warranted when a student displays emotional or behavioral patterns that impact learning and/or social emotional functioning. Some things to watch out for are patterns of emotions or behavior that get in the way of the student's ability to learn, their relationships with others, both inside and outside of school, or the student's ability to thrive and be well. Having an effective, transparent referral process for school mental health services is necessary to make sure that students and families are connected with the appropriate providers, services, and supports in a timely manner, and that they don't fall through the cracks. Here are some best practices your team should consider for making effective connections to services and supports for students and families, either within your school or within your community. Your mental health team should have an up-to-date resource map for both mental health supports in your school as well as mental health supports in the community. Your mental health team should provide clear information for students and families so they're able to self-refer to supports and connect directly to mental health services. If you have an embedded community mental health provider at your school, make sure that you are making a warm handoff with students and families to those providers. Additionally, the mental health team should routinely follow up to make sure that students got connected either within the school or to outside supports. And if not, then the team should troubleshoot the barriers and help the students and families navigate and make connections so their student can get the support that they need. Now that we've mapped out kind of your process for connecting a student and family with supports, let's talk about what data and procedures might help you figure out what kind of support that student needs within your multi-tiered system of support or MTSS framework. First of all, your mental health team should be using multiple data sources to match the mental health intervention to the student's needs. You should use a consistent and systematic process for assessing student needs at baseline and then monitor improvement or progress every 4 to 6 weeks using those same data points. Some other considerations that will help your team infuse the care values we spoke about earlier into the way that they're thinking about appropriate interventions for students are making sure that the supports are aligned with the students and families' preferences related to intervention length and format, having the services available in the students' or families' preferred language, alignment of the intervention with the culture and lived experience of the student. These are critically important to make sure that the intervention is really aligned with that student and family's preferences and cultural beliefs and rituals. Lastly, it is important for your mental health team to develop metrics or a process to determine when a student needs to move up to a higher level of intervention and support, and also when a student has reached some or all of their goals and is either ready to step down to tier 2 or discontinue the interventions because they've been successful. Again, this is an area that teams sometimes overlook. They're just really excited to get students connected with supports, and they sometimes forget to do the progress monitoring component and reflect as a team on when is the appropriate time to either that a student is needing additional supports, or maybe the student has stabilized and really reached their goals or most of their goals and could step down to a lower level of support to make room for another student at the higher level of support. The last best practice that we're going to talk about today is collecting and sharing data among the school mental health team members. Promoting data sharing is foundational for effective teaming and collaboration. And this is especially important when partners are both school and from the community. The first thing a team should do is identify the type of data that you want or need to share about students. Ensuring that your target goals for the intervention are clear and measurable will make it easier to figure out the data points that you need or want to share. Then your team needs to identify the data sources and processes to track and review progress by the student towards their goals. One suggestion is to start with what is most feasible based on what data is currently available. Again, the idea of let's start small. Over time, your team can work up to your ideal data sharing process or system. But again, we encourage you to not overcomplicate things right away. The team should identify any issues related to data sharing regarding HIPAA and FERPA and talk through a plan that everyone is comfortable with ahead of time to avoid any misunderstandings or confusion down the road. Your team should consider securing consents and releases of information from students and families to allow data sharing across systems, partners, in an effort to have a more comprehensive picture of student progress across educational and social, emotional, and behavioral domains. This will help the team be clear about what information can and cannot be shared with whom. Finally, the team, when they come to consensus about the data sharing agreement, they should draft a policy on this that can be shared with your school and be clear about what information will be shared from the school to community partners and what information the community partners will share with the school. Again, this process can take a lot of discussion, a lot of listening, and a lot of trying to take each other's perspective in talking through what can sometimes be a complicated discussion about data sharing and who should know what and why, and then also making sure that you've got some systems in place to protect the data privacy for students and making sure that only the individuals that your team has decided should have access to that information have it. So those are the best practices related to teaming. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. We hope that this video on the best practices in building and maintaining effective district and school mental health teams has been useful. Please check out our other videos on the other best practice modules of the Comprehensive School Mental Health Systems Framework. Have a great day.